far out there in the open solitude of the North Central Plains, where I lived my early years, I could be astonished at the sight of a huge solitary rock. How did it get there? Neither 200 men nor 20 teams of horses could have transported such a rock from somewhere to this place out there in the midst of nowhere. Was it born there? Somehow grow there? Or was it dropped there? How did it happen to be there? The mystery of it. Wherever it came from. Or maybe it had no origins, but for many millions of years it had sat there. And for many millions of years it will continue to sit there. Touched once or twice by human hands, but never touched again in the foreverness of time and space. Solid rock in a solitary place, and solitude all around it for several miles, until I would come across its distant, non-communicative rock cousin. Perhaps you've seen other rocks. Of course you have. On the ocean's edge, rocks washed smooth and round by the eternal flow of the tides. But that rock out there, in the midst of nowhere, on the empty plains, has remained unchanged by the storms and seasons of the ages. And something more needs to be said about it. It was there day and night, has always been there, surrounded by a special presence of silence. Any human being standing beside that rock would hear nothing but the breath of the human body and the eerie murmuring of the hidden stars in the sky. And Jesus said, "Upon this rock I will build my church, and the gates of hell shall never prevail against it." What a pity that theologians down the years have made a mess of that statement in all their quarrelling. You'd probably not be surprised if I were to tell you that in my final year in divinity school, I was told I had to write an essay on these very words. And I told them I didn't believe a word that the theologians of the ages had said was the correct interpretation of this passage. I think I've lived with that aftermath ever since. I wanted to say that the rock was the mystery of things. The rock of the eternal, rock of ages. The rock of life beyond all transitory life. The sacredness of it hidden beneath the solid substance of it. And many will never see it. Holy, 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 Lord God Almighty, early in the morning our song shall rise to thee, and no one hears it. The rock of his church, the rock of the church, is not jammed up with confusing, conflicting doctrine. It is the rock that lifts us out of our ordinariness. And for a few moments, we're in the presence of the holy. in the presence of the mystery, in the presence of something extraordinary. A rock. So today I leave the solitude of the open space of the rock out there on the northern plains, and I invite you to come with me to a very small place, perhaps a sacred place, Mingary. And here is an astonishing story. It is the story of an idea taking on visible form, and in several ways actually changing the hope and the spirit of thousands of human beings. Here in St. Michael's, we had a unique opportunity to do a most unlikely thing. We would transform an unused space, a chapel, a formal chapel, on the side of this church, into a space that came to be called Mingary. And this is how it happened. Every day I was being reminded of the large numbers of people who had been through a trauma in their life and had never been fully healed. Large numbers of people who had been through painful times, painful, extensive sadness, and never found adequate consolation. Large numbers of people travelling every day to work, carrying bags loaded with resentment and anger, and had never felt the sacred transformation of a soothing silence. Large numbers of people searching in their life for the urgency of some closeness to somebody, but ultimately finding that they'd been given the reality of solitude and the strength of loneliness. Like the rock of those distant plains. Yes, and on this rock of loneliness, I will build my church, the church of life's outward strength and life's inward transformation. So I said to this St. Michael's Church, let us transform that one-time sacred place into a new kind of sacred place, and so fulfill some different words of Scripture which say, behold, I make all things new. We spoke to several sculptors of rock and decided on a Japanese sculptor, Akira Takazawa. By some coincidence, was it a coincidence? His name means sacred rock. I wanted a large rock from somewhere out there on the outer plains. I wanted it to be a damaged rock, like people damaged. And I wanted it to be held in place by another rock underneath it, by two rocks underneath it. Because all human beings need more than one support in life. And I wanted water of quietness and healing to flow over the rock and fall into a bowl of serenity and harmony below. I suggested that large rock, the first rock, would display a miracle, an extraordinary sight of a dove. A dove would rise out of the damaged rock, and it would fly upwards towards a majestic light above, and then turn towards the east, towards the rising of the sun on a new day, like Jacob in the Old Testament. Akira Takazawa, a Japanese sculptor, grasped the symbol immediately and began to work, always with an eye to the context of the space in which the sculpture would sit and stay. And so the walls of the space were completely reconstructed. And as anyone stood at the doorway, they would be standing on a rock, which he called the Rock of Welcome, under their feet. And from there they would see the walls, the holding, embracing experience of the walls. And the lights along each wall, the lights of our everyday events. And the lights in the ceiling inviting us to consider lifting up our hearts, sursum corda, rising above the enduring pains of life to contemplate some transcendence. And in the wing of the dove, he constructed a wing of a dove coming out of the rock, and it turned to a glimpse of light on the east wall, the sun rising. It's an astonishing story, but there's a little more. Long before the idea took hold, my son Angus and I paid a visit to Iona, that sacred isle off the west coast of Scotland, the place where St. Columba landed to bring Christianity to Scotland. We'd both been to Iona before, and we were revisiting the abbey which stands on the island. Columba had set the original rocks for that abbey, that monastery, way back in 563 AD. And it became, over many centuries, it became one of the great religious centres in a very hostile land of Picts and pagans. While Angus and I were in the abbey on that visit, we stood for a moment and looked into the one corner, for there they erected a small shrine. And it said, "This shrine is erected to remember people traumatized in life." And as we emerged from the abbey, Angus said to me, "You should do something like that in St. Michael's." And we sat on the rock fence outside the abbey. And I pondered, and I said to him, "Yes, but I would need it to be something that would be used by everyone." The corner in the abbey was focused on a cross. So that tended to make it Christian. I wanted it to be not exclusively Christian. I'd like it to be inclusive. What could I put there? Do you know, at that very moment, a white dove landed right in front of us. And he said, "There it is. The dove." Iona is a word that means dove. In the Hebrew of the Old Testament, there's the story of Noah, as you know, and the catastrophe of the flood. The story is climaxed by a dove returning with a twig in its beak to signify and symbolize that the storm was over and new life could begin. The word Iona comes from the Hebrew word Iona, the dove. A second astonishing thing occurred. One Sunday after Mingary had been built, we had a visit from some of the people of the Aboriginal tribe which were originally on this site. And they presented me with a chunk of red rock. And that red rock we placed in the peace bowl in Mingary, along with a small green rock, marble, which came from Iona. And so two worlds are united in that bowl in Mingary. And yes, if you ever get a chance to visit some of the rocks of ancient Celtic Britain, as this book would disclose, you will see many formations resembling the formation of Mingary. The big rock, the rock holding it underneath. All done, all fully intended here to link us with history, with ancient times and cultures, with sacred sites of the generations. So our Mingary took shape. We needed funds for the construction of it. One of our number, Jean Gray, had died, and she left a considerable sum that we could put to the project. Good friend Geoffrey Crawford Fish, his daughter had died, and he wanted to do something that came alongside and called many of his friends and said, "We'll help build Mingary." And they held a very comprehensive auction, which raised another considerable sum. We were short of $70,000, however, to do the job. So I read the poem. Would you believe it? I read the poem that you heard today on the orange tree. And one of our number, Elizabeth Green, said, "I'll do something. I'll put a tree, the twigs of a tree, a bare tree, here in St. Michael's. And I'll put an orange on the tree for every $1,000 which is gifted. Each $1,000, an orange would go on the tree. Within 2 weeks, we had 70 oranges on the tree. Astonishing. The astonishing story of Mingary. Many other people, by their donations and interest, participated in this project. And today people continue in their commitment and support. In the past there were donations for the basic formation, donations for the brochures, donations for the chairs, donations for the handsome gates, donations for the plaques. In the future, we will look for donations to sustain the gardens. We plan to place memorial plaques cemented into the gardens. Where a significant gift is made, we will place a plaque fixed in the garden. Mingary will be a continuing place of remembering, of refocusing, reshaping, restoring. Well, then came the task of construction, bringing huge rocks through the doorway and then setting them into place. Although we had careful expert advice from the church architects of Lovell and Chen, the detailed getting these rocks in the right place was taken up by one of our own council members, architect Graham Nielsen. I well remember he and I standing together as the rock was put into place. I enunciating the idea and the theme, he giving the workers detailed, practical instructions as to how it was to be placed. I then went searching for a name for the place. I went back to Scotland to the Isle of Mull. It's an island that you must pass through in order to get to Iona. And I searched name after name, hoping I might find a place. I discovered Mingary, a place where sheep graze for food, a place where the sheep graze and then they go on looking for more food, going further. So I drove the roads of Mull, asking people, where is Mingary? And they would say, oh, it's over there. So I'd go over there and I'd ask people over there, well, where is it? Oh, they said, it's further on. So I walked and I walked further on. Mingary is a place where people know about it, but they don't know where it is. Mingary is like the mystery of heaven. We know about it, but we don't know where it is. So I knew then I had the right name. A place of restoration, feeding, a place of going further, a place where you'll never find it, a place somewhere on the Isle of Mull, but now a place in the heart of Melbourne, doing something of immense importance, being a place of restoration and nourishment in a spiritual way, if you like, in a psychological way, a place of going further, a place beyond where you are, where you were, a resting place. An early governor of Australia, Lachlan Macquarie, is buried on the Isle of Mull, a place of remembering, a place of restoration. Not long after Mingary was in place, we opened it. It was opened with a large ceremony, opened by the Chief Justice of the Supreme Court of Victoria and the Chief Rabbi of the Temple Beth Israel. Other people were there to open it and be part of it. There it was, an idea transformed into a vital reality. Rock, light, water, the dove. Different themes emerging from international experience, from cross-cultural awareness, from in antiquity to modernity, from existential consciousness to the archetypal symbols of the unconscious of the ages. So Mingary has taken two concerns. What is the way to our health of mind and our wholeness of heart? Is it through anger and conflict, or more likely through a careful, considered quietness of heart and mind? Do the external symbols of our religion and culture have the capacity to inspire and restore our inner contentment? Or are they external symbols, powerless residues of the past? Mingary points to the renewing power of quietness, the healing of quietness in a noisy world and rowdy relationships. Mingary encourages us to see that our external objects have the power, surely, to transform our inner life and our interpersonal relationships. It was soon evident that people who were coming into Mingary were searching for something more. They had deep needs in their life. And so I invited Dr. Lynette Kramer, an experienced psychologist, an Orthodox Jew, to become the director of Mingary. She responded to the task with enthusiasm and passion, and we're all surely proud of what she has achieved to make Mingary what it is today. Since she became director of Mingary, more than 2,500 people have come for counselling. More than 2,500, I say. She now has two assistant senior psychologists, Michelle Doolan and Robin Hebner, to help her. Mingary has become a training centre for postgraduate students in psychology and psychotherapy. And Dr. Kramer has prepared this manual as part of that training program. She and her staff have now trained 100 interns in a program which would equal and better any in this country. 100 have already been trained through Mingary, and 12 more are in training this year. We also have been the recipients of donations and bequests, and recently one trust gave us a grant of $100,000 to develop the next phase of Mingary, and I'd like to take a moment to tell you about it. In all of this, St Michael's and Mingary have developed a harmonious mutuality, a mutually beneficial relationship. St Michael's provides funds and space and support staff. Mingary contributes its own funding and gives St Michael's a unique status amongst religious organisations across Australia, and even a unique status in community organisations internationally. That's what it is, an astonishing story. It is a real outreach, a real service, a real work of pastoral care, of psychological therapy, of therapeutic restoration. Do you know, last year, on Melbourne's Open Day, 1,600 people visited Mingary. But something more. I especially wanted to develop the external environment, the gardens around Mingary. Because if we don't pause to enhance our external environments, we soon turn on our internal states. Because, you see, gardens are so important, the externals are so important, because flowers are symbols of us going beyond the work of therapy to grow something, beyond therapy, something to expand our narrow neuroses, something to give colour and inspiration to life, to our way of relating to each other, and finding some harmony with those things that are ever beyond us. Today I've asked you to wear a white flower, because that white flower is a symbol of healing, a symbol of gentleness, a symbol of our connections one with the other. We can talk about physical and psychological resources. We can talk about spiritual transformation. But if we neglect to grow our shrubs and trees and flowers and gardens, metaphorically or literally, we neglect what it is to grow in enjoyment, in exaltation, and with all that ebullience that life opens to us in our difficult times. Mingary can be our gift. It is our gift to Melbourne. And it is notable that so many people have discovered it. One television program called it one of Melbourne's best-kept secrets. Let us keep the secret no longer. We wanted to far and wide people to know about it. A couple of weeks ago, Dr. Stephen Koski was here, and he plans to open a Mingary in his church in Oregon, United States. And later in the year, Dr. Kramer will go to his place in Oregon to tell them about what we have done here and are continuing to do. The grant of $100,000 that I spoke about is going to be our way of taking Mingary further. That's what the word means. And so I'm commending to you also today the possibility of you joining the coracle of Mingary, a picture of which is in front of you. Which side is it? Over here, perhaps. You can see the picture. When I was an undergraduate at university, I joined what was called the Iona community in Scotland. I was intrigued to find that their magazine, which was used to keep people in touch with each other, their magazine was called The Coracle. A coracle is a small, rather fragile boat. It was used by people in ancient times to carry messages from one island to another within that Scottish archipelago. It was used to carry items of food and friendship. Here in Melbourne in the 21st century, I'm asking you and people generally to get aboard this fragile coracle of Mingary and carry an important message to people in scattered places. Our coracle will always be a symbol of the fragility of life and the troubles of our time. But each one of you can become a member of the coracle, carrying messages of friendship, messages of information, messages of invitation to your friends, to your family, to people in many places to know about Mingary, to be part of Mingary. It's a simple task. Would you let people know that Mingary is here? Here is a place of healing, consolation, and restoration for times of loneliness, grief, and trauma. Here is a place where expert help of a therapeutic kind can be found in the work of Mingary's counselling. Here is a place of soothing and inspiration and quietness in the gardens, especially created for this purpose. Here is a place of searching, going forward, going further, knowing the importance of learning again and again, that our external objects can become integrated into our lives as real experiences of transformation. So will you walk today with me through Mingary? Be open to different ways of being healed and being inspired. Walk through Mingary, take an interest, be carried forward by the caring kindness of the coracle of Mingary. In the happenings of our lives, we commonly get so affected by some traumas and the distresses of life that we come to a standstill. And we do as the psalm said today, we go round and round in the same furrow, never moving forwards. But Mingary says we need to go further. We can be so affected by our loneliness, our emptiness, by the negative emotions of life that are always around us, that we can come to a state where we don't believe anymore in the power of that inner transformation, in the importance of growing your gardens, metaphorically and literally, the gardens of inspiration and growth and healing. And so we grind round and round in the same circle. Or we behave like the myth of Sisyphus. Indeed, we become its own reality, pushing the stone up the hill, rolling back and pushing it up again. We can do better than that. Mingary calls us to go further, go forwards. The light on the east wall is there to remind us of a new day dawning. The dove, of course, it's just a chunk of marble, unless it lifts you out of yourself to celebrate your part in being alive to something that is greater than anything that would reduce you to a smaller self. So today, come with me, walk through Mingary in the silence. Touch the rock, draw strength from the stone. Let the external objects of Mingary become inspiration for your internal transformation. And remember to tell the story. Be part of the coracle. And then we all might well say, Sursum corda, indeed, lift up your hearts. Would you please stand? And so the blessing for today. May the God you see in all the colours of creation arouse in you a sense of awe and wonder. May the God who is a sacred presence be real to you. May the God who is a source of inspiration and courage keep calling you forwards. May your God go with you and bless you today and always.